What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. We're here going my core plays for week 12 of the NFL season on DraftKings and FanDuel. If you enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Let's dive right into it. And as always, if you like what you see on the screen behind me, it's available complete free 4-week over my Patreon with their free trials. And if you like it, you can stay. If not, come to kick rocks. I don't care either way. But I have projections for DraftKings and FanDuel. The entire slate statted out, so if you use that for props, be my guest. My optimizer, which I'll run at the end of the video, give you guys an idea on who's populating the most as of right now on Friday morning. With my ownership projections and all the data that I look at each and every single week to help myself build successful lineups. So again, if you want to check that out, you can find a link down in the description or the pinned comment. And I do have my Discord community, which is active 24/7. But let's move on to quarterbacks. And we'll start with the two studs up top. And even though CJ Stroud is priced similar, I do think these two are certainly a tier above him, and especially since they've been doing it longer. But we have Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. They're facing off in the same game here. The highest over-under on the slate at 48.5, 3-point spread in Philly. And this should be a good one to watch. And I'm glad it's in the 425 slot, so it's basically a primetime game for us. And this should be a good one. These are two of the better teams in football, although Buffalo, I mean, the record, it's not been there this season. They've definitely lost a few that certainly could have gone the other way. But they've been struggling a little bit, but I still think they're one of the better teams in the league. Although, like I said, the record, not completely reflecting that. But Philly got the big win last week versus Kansas City on the road at the end of the game. Started off horribly for them, but ended up getting the dub. Tougher matchup versus Buffalo. They're allowing you 4th fewest points to gain the position. But when you were Jalen Hurts, you were pretty much matchup proof. He's been great through the air this season, 250 yards, 7.6 yards per attempt, 1.5 passing touchdowns. And what we all love Jalen Hurts for is that rushing upside. 0.9 rushing touchdowns per game, 35 yards on the ground, and over 7 design runs. That's not including scrambles. He is as safe as it comes. The floor is high, the ceiling is high. And I believe he only has 2 games this season below 20 points. I have to fact check that, but the dude has been consistent. And then Josh Allen, $8,100. He has been a fantasy superstar this season. I know the turnovers obviously bad. I guess that's like the one bad thing about Josh Allen, but he still makes incredible throws, incredible plays each and every single week. 260 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, 32 pass attempts, 70% completion percentage. And while he's not getting a ton of rushing yards this season and the design runs are down, he's still going to be a goal line threat, 0.64 rushing touchdowns per game this season. And it's a great matchup versus Philly, who's currently allowing the 4th most points per game to the quarterback position. So Josh Allen definitely looking like QB1 on this slate, although it's very close between him and Jalen Hurts. And CJ Stroud, $7,700. Like I said, he's pretty much priced in that stud range. And while he's amazing, I'm still not going to put him quite on that pedestal quite yet. But this is another good game to target for fantasy purposes this week. 47.5 point over under, so it's only 1 point lower than the Eagles and Bills game. 23-point implied team total, 1.5 point spread. So it should be pretty back and forth. And he is averaging only 4 yards less than 300 passing yards per game, 1.7 touchdowns, throwing the ball 33 times per game, 8.3 yards per attempt. The completion percentage is low. He doesn't really run the football too much, only 8 yards per game, but he's been amazing through the air. He's got plenty of weapons in Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Noah Brown, Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz. And the Jaguars are currently allowing the 5th most points per game. So if you're looking to get off the ownership, definitely a lot of it's going to go to Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen because they have that name value, and that's a game everyone's going to want to target. But CJ Stroud is really not too far away. Then on the flip side of this game, so it's really nice that we're kind of stacked together here. We have Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's about $1,000 some cheaper. So I would say he's definitely going to be more popular this week. And I do think ownership wise, he will be in the top 3, top 4 this weekend of all QBs. But I get it. People are going to want to target this game. 24.5 implied team total. And for recency bias sake, he did go off last week, which is like his first amazing fantasy game of the season. And he's got good weapons. And Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley finally had a good game. Evan Ingram, no shortage of weapons here. And we do have Travis Etienne out of the backfield. So I'm definitely looking to target this game up. I think a lot of people will have exposure to this Philly-Buffalo game and the Houston-Jacksonville game. And there's still going to be ownership on other places, but those will be 2 pretty popular games to stack up. Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. He faces off versus the Arizona Cardinals defense, which we know is really not too much of a defense. The 21st versus quarterbacks of the season. The Cooper Kupp got hurt early on. I would tell you right now, if Cooper Kupp does not end up playing, I don't really have any interest in Matthew Stafford here, so he's very dependent on Cooper Kupp. I believe he got a limited practice in yesterday, so it's going to be a TBT kind of thing. Hurt his ankle early last week. Tried to return, was warming up on the sideline, but they just didn't let him come back in. So if he plays, I like Stafford versus Arizona. If not, I'm pretty much out here because I think the upside is very limited. And for $100 more, I can get Trevor Lawrence. And once again, we have our quarterback stacked in the game here, Baker Mayfield and Gardner Minshew. I think I'm going to call this the junker game of the week, but it's going to be chalky as well. I do think Baker and his weapons will have some decent ownership this week, especially Minshew and the Colts offense, because Jonathan Taylor is looking like the chalk running back of the week despite the bad matchup versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then Michael Pittman of ownership as well. And it's just because Tampa Bay's defense is so bad versus the pass this season. They're allowing the 3rd most points per game at 22.4 and 290 passing yards and 1.6 passing touchdowns. But we've seen Minshew have upside in the past. This game features a 2.5 point spread, 23-point implied team total for the Colts here and for Baker. They should be trailing, but we're in a dome. Don't have to worry about any weather 20.5 implied team total here, 43.5 point over under. I think there's some shootout upside. Both defenses can certainly give up points. So if you're looking to save some salary and spend up at the running back or wide receiver position in certain aspects, maybe even Travis Kelce this week because he owns the Las Vegas Raiders, I am fine with either of these guys, but do have a slight preference towards Gardner Minshew. All right, so heading over to the build, just a quick disclaimer. Please don't copy and paste lineups you see on YouTube. I am simply just grabbing a player from each position that we talk about, throwing me in the lineup, and making sure I'm following the rules that I have set for myself when I build single entry in 3 max builds, where I want 1 quarterback, I want 2 pass catchers with them, and I want a run back option. You don't always have to have a run back option, but just a general rule of thumb, you typically do in tournaments with that game to blow up. So you're hoping at least one guy from the other team, coming back, and it ends up being a shootout. But for this one, it's going to be expensive because we're going to have to pretty much play Stephon Diggs if we go with Josh Allen, but we're going to have to try to find enough value to make it work. But I'm looking forward to this game, so let's stack it up for this one, so it should be fun. All right, so moving on to running backs, plenty of options this week. There's no CMC on this slate, so it's basically all mid-range with a couple of cheapies or bust. So up top, we have Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're not going with the passing attack, it would make sense to get Travis Etienne in your builds because they're going to put up points. 24.5 implied team total. This game does have one of the higher over-unders of the entire week. It's a 1.5 point spread, and Travis Etienne gets some of the most volume in the entire league. 17.5 carries per game, 4 targets, 12% target share. Matchup's pretty much middle of the road versus the Texans. They're not allowing too many rushing yards, only 73 on the season, 28 rushing touchdowns. So it's not like a dream matchup or anything, but we know Travis Etienne is one of the better running backs in football, and that volume is always secure. Jonathan Taylor is going to be very popular this week on both sites. Only $7,500 on FanDuel, which is nearly $1,000 cheaper, well, $1,100 cheaper than Travis Etienne. Only $6,900 over on DraftKings. The only issue is the matchup sucks here. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been a pass funnel defense for several years now, and if you're looking at the numbers on the season, they have yet to allow a rushing touchdown. They're at 0 on the season, 73 rushing yards per game, 5th fewest points allowed. Jonathan Taylor, though, we do know that he's going to get a ton of volume in this offense. His snaps have increased every single week since returning, and Zach Moss has steadily gone down. So he is going to pretty much get all the bulk of the work here. He's going to get a couple of targets. He's got 11% target share on the season, averaging 15 carries per game, but keep in mind the volume has ramped up in recent weeks. Now, he hasn't really been that efficient, which it's down from previous seasons. He's only at 3.8 on the season. And it's a tough matchup versus Tampa. So I do have my concerns, especially with him being extremely chalky. But if you are playing cash games, he does make sense. DeAndre Swift at $6,800. So he's actually viable as a run back option, the build we are going with, because I am fine with any of the pass catchers for Philly this week, but they're super expensive. Smith's not that cheap. And then Brown's obviously to the moon expensive. And then I have no interest in their tight end situation with no Dallas Goedert. So Swift, and he's involved in the passing game. I actually do think he makes some sense here. And the Bills are 23rd versus running backs this season. So I think he's one of the better tournament running backs on the slate. Kyren Williams is expected to return this week. I'm not sure that's an official announcement yet. Super expensive on FanDuel, but a much better play over on DraftKings at $6,600. And he was incredible before getting hurt. I believe he was RB4 or RB5 on the season long, before exiting with an injury after the Arizona game where he went off in the second half. But on the season, 76 yards per game, 16 carries, rushing touchdown, nearly 5 yards per carry, 4 targets. He was running a ton of routes beforehand. They waived Henderson. I'm assuming Royce Freeman will still get some work here, but if we're going to get 15 plus touches out of Kyren Williams on a dream matchup versus the Cardinals, who are allowing the 3rd most points per game to the position, I will take it at only $6,600. And if he performs like he was early in the season, he'll probably be in that 7K range soon. Then we have Derrick Henry, $6,400 on DraftKings. If you're ever going to play Derrick Henry this year, this is probably the one time you're going to do it. I have yet to do it, and he's obviously declined quite heavily this season. And Spears is getting a large chunk of snaps in that offense. And when they are trailing, it's pretty much the Spears show because we know Henry is not going to be too involved in the passing game. Only 7.5% target share on the season, which equates to 2 targets per game. He's still getting volume on the ground, 16 attempts, but only 4.2 yards per carry, which is down from seasons past. But he gets a dream matchup versus the Carolina Panthers. They're also favored in this game, 3.5 points, and they're playing at home. This is a pretty much dream spot for Derrick Henry. They're allowing the 2nd most points in the position, 1.4 rushing touchdowns and 120 rushing yards per game. So like I said, if you're ever going to play Derrick Henry, this is the week to do it. Prefer him over on DraftKings at the lower price point, but receptions are less reliant over on FanDuel, so he makes sense on both sites, even though he's more expensive over on FanDuel relatively. Isaiah Pacheco is $6,200. I don't hate him as a tournament play. I do think a lot of ownership will go to guys like Derrick Henry, Kyren Williams, Jonathan Taylor this week, so he should go a little bit overlooked, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. No one really ever wants to play the running back. This is like a showdown slate, but this is a good spot for Pacheco. We know the Raiders are actually decently tough versus the pass, but versus the run, 27 versus running backs, allowing 110 rushing yards per game. And Pacheco is getting you 15 plus touches per game with involvement in the passing game, 8% target share on the season. So I'm fine at $6,200 right there. And even though they're on the road, they're 8.5 point favorites with a 26 point implied team total. Rashad White, $6,100, terrible on the ground, but excellent through the air. And that's what's going to keep him viable. He's almost like a Walmart version of Alvin Kamara, 4.5 targets per game, 13% target share. And the Colts are allowing the 4th most points per game the running back position. So I don't care what he does on the ground. I'll just take the dump offs he's getting each and every single week. James Conner versus the Rams. They're actually kind of stiff versus the run. 8th fewest points to get into position, but he gets enough volume. He's actually been pretty good in the season. Over 5 yards per carry. Not too involved in the passing game, but if you're below 6K and you're getting 15 plus carries, I'm fine with it. Then Jerome Ford at $5,600. Just split the work with Kareem Hunt, but he's the preferred back in this offense, and he gets passing game work as well. 3.5 targets per game on a 10% target share. And this is a dream matchup versus the Broncos, who are allowing the most points to get in the position, 140 rushing yards. So I think there's enough to go around for both him and Kareem Hunt. And with DTR under center, it's really kind of hard to air it out with confidence, so they're going to rely on the run game here. All right, heading back over to our build. Like I said, the Philly pass catchers are super expensive. If I'm playing Stephon Diggs, I just don't think I can afford A.J. Brown at the same time because we're left with $4,000 left, and running backs aren't cheap. They're above 4K. They're above $5,000. So I just don't think that's going to work out. So I think going DeAndre Swift so we can still get a run back option, and he's going to get volume on the ground, and he'll get volume to the air, and it's a good matchup versus Buffalo's run defense. So I'm fine with going DeAndre Swift here. Now, it's going to be off the chalk Jonathan Taylor as well. And I like Jonathan Taylor, but he will be much less around, and he makes more sense with our stack, so that's fine. And then I really like Kyron Williams here at $6,600. Let's plug him in. If we have to downgrade to like a Jerome Ford to save money at the end, we can do it, but I'm fine with that for right now. Moving on to our pass catchers. As always, there's a ton of them here, but just try to correlate it best with the stack that you're rolling with. I have Josh Allen, so as much as I like Cooper Kupp this week if he happens to play, or Puka Nacua, Mike Evans, whoever it may be, that's just not going to fit my build, and that'll come at the expense of completing my stack with Stephon Diggs. So I have Josh Allen. I'm playing Stephon Diggs. No ifs, ands, buts are about it. I realize he has struggled recently, but I don't care. He's a stud. He's had some bad matchups. Should bounce back quite nicely here as the Eagles are allowing the most points per game in the wide receiver position at 48, 103 receiving yards, and 1.5 receiving touchdowns. And Diggs' volume is elite, 10 targets per game, 30% target share, and he's got one of the best gunslingers in the game getting the ball. Yeah, I don't care. I think he's going to bounce back. A.J. Brown would be an excellent run back option. The problem is that is nearly $18,000 just between those two guys. Add in the fact that I have an $8,000 quarterback, it's just not happening. So I like Brown, I like Devontae Smith, but just very expensive. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, I am fine with either. Although if Cooper Kupp happens to be out, Puka Nacua becomes an excellent play at $7,600. And honestly, I think he would be cash game viable on the season. 10 targets per game, 30.5% target share. And the first few weeks when Cooper Kupp was out, he lit it on fire, got nearly 20 targets a game. It felt like, and it's a great matchup versus Arizona. So I think he'd be a fine one-off play. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Michael Pittman, all part of that Indianapolis Tampa Bay stack that I think is going to be looking pretty decent this week, especially point per dollar wise for Michael Pittman. He's a guy that I think you can play in cash games, as well as seeing nearly 10 targets per game on a 30.5% target share. We know just how bad Tampa Bay's defense is versus the pass and wide receivers in general. Tank Dell, another guy that you could probably one-off if you wanted, but the price keeps coming up, but it's deserved. I think this is probably a respectable price tag for him, because when he was in the 5K range and the 4K range, it's just way too cheap. So I think around 7K is probably fair for him, maybe even mid 7K if he can just keep it up. But it's a good matchup versus Jackson. I'm fine with him in game stacks, him and Nico Collins. Well, Nico Collins seems to have some luster moving away from him that he had earlier on in the season. He still saw 11 targets in his return, so he's going to be heavily involved in that offense. Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, if you're stacking up Jacksonville, Houston, both guys are fine. Christian Kirk has a bit of a safer floor, but we know Calvin Ridley has that ceiling that we saw last week. And then we have the Arizona Cardinals situation, which is a bit iffy at wide receiver. So we just got news like a couple minutes ago, because they had Michael Wilson on here originally, but he just got ruled out. And we saw last week with no Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch received 8 targets from Kyler Murray. And we've seen Greg Dortch with Kyler have success in the past. So he's only $3,300. And currently Marquise Brown is questionable as well. And I don't think we've received news yet quite on him. But if he happened to be out, I mean, these value plays over in Arizona in the passing game are basically auto plays, because we know the Rams secondary is not good. I mean, you can pass on them. If you look at PFF, they're not rated very highly whatsoever. And I mean, you have Rondell Moore there at $3,600. You have Greg Dortch at $3,300. I believe Zach Pascal is there as well. He's currently questionable. Then you have Baccalia. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. I apologize. But yeah, it would be slim pickings, but the ball's got to go somewhere besides Trey McBride. So there would definitely be some value here. But I still think guys like Dortch and Moore are playable this week at their low price points. Josh Downs, part of the game stack as well. DeMario Douglas at $4,400. Well, it's not like a sexy play, because I just hate playing New England Patriots. If there's a soft matchup versus the New York Giants, I'd be fine with that as well. And Juju is $3K flat. And while he's not someone I've ever even thought about playing this year, if you are just trying to go with that A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen / Jalen Hurts kind of stack this week, you might have to dip down that low, but I would feel a lot more comfortable with guys like Rondell Moore and Greg Dortch. All right, so moving back over to our build here, like I said, I'm playing Josh Allen, so I'm basically married to Stephon Diggs. Now, we do have Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakur as viable options as well. We know Shakur had that monster touchdown last week versus the New York Jets, but I don't think I'm going to go that route. I like Dalton Kincaid quite a bit, so I think that's the double stack that I want to roll with. But I do know I'm probably going to need value at the wide receiver position because I have spent a lot of money so far. We only have $3,900 left per player, and we have, what, 5 spots left? So we're going to be hurting for money a little bit. But let's throw in one of those Arizona value wide receivers. And I don't think DK is updated yet, but he is out. I just got the notification from Sleeper and confirmed that. And Marquise Brown's status is currently up in the air right now. He was a non-participant in Thursday practice, although keep in mind it was Thanksgiving, so I'm not really sure how much I want to put into it. But even if he is in, I still think Moore and Dortch are going to be viable plays. So let's go with Dortch here. I mean, he had 8 targets in the first week, and there's going to be no Michael Wilson again. So it's currently the same exact situation. And if you take Marquise Brown out, it just gets even better. Then we have tight ends. And if you have the money for Travis Kelce, but my guess, I really only would play him if I'm going with Patrick Mahomes stacks because I just don't really think I'm going to have the kind of chunk of change to spend $800 on a tight end position this week. So completely stack relying here, but I just don't think I can one off Kelce. Dalton Schultz, he is only in my lineup if I have CJ Stroud or if I'm just game stacking that one up. Dalton Kincaid, he's going to be married to my Josh Allen lineups for the most part. Like, he's fine as a one-off, but I think if you're playing cash this week, especially if Marquise Brown's going to be out as well, in addition to Michael Wilson, I mean, Trey McBride's the super safe option every single week. He's going to get the targets, and volume trumps all, and it's obviously really not too bad out there, and it's a good matchup versus the Rams in this game. Does have some decent upside here, only 1.5 point spread in this one, and we're at home in the Dome, so no concerns about weather. Evan Ingram, I think, will be very popular. I could see him being the cash game tight end this week at only $4,200. He just gets consistent volume in that offense, and people are going to want to stack this game up. People like Trevor Lawrence, so he's a fun pairing option with them, but it's just cheap exposure to this game. You see 7 targets, 23% target share, nearly 6 catches per game. Has yet to find the end zone this season, but Houston has been terrible versus tight ends, allowing the second most points in the position, so this is a perfect spot for Evan Ingram. And if you're going with Baker Mayfield and you need a really cheap stacking option, you don't want to use Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, and you have to save some money, K-Don's only $3,200, and he sees roughly a handful of targets a game. Then as usual for defense, I just scroll down and find the first viable defense, Vegas, implied team total-wise, that would make half some sense here. So the Rams versus the Cardinals, I don't hate it. 21.5 implied team total against them, and if they're going to lose a couple of wide receivers this week, I mean, it's not the worst play in the world. I don't like the Rams defense, but I do have Kyron Williams in my lineup, so I guess that's not the worst correlation in the world. Falcons versus the Saints at $2,900. It's halfway decent, 21.5 total again. Panthers versus Tennessee, probably not going to go that route. The Chiefs versus the Raiders. I don't know why they're only $3,100. It looks like they're the most expensive defense on FanDuel, so that's a bit of a mispricing over on DK. I realize they're on the road, but they have one of the better defenses this season. I got them projected for 9.4 points. The Patriots versus the Giants is fine as well, $3,200. So really, I mean, honestly, Chiefs, Patriots, and Broncos here look like the best defenses to target, but the Chiefs will be my number one this week. All right, so finishing off our lineup here, we have 4 spots left and only $4,100 to do it. Let's move over to defense here and see what kind of actual money we have to work with, because I'm just going to plug in a cheap one. As much as I like the Chiefs, I think I might have to save a little bit of dough. Let's just roll with the Rams here. Well, I guess they're only $300 cheaper, so it wouldn't be too big of a deal. So we can try to fit the Chiefs in, and if not, we could always drop to the Rams. Like I said, I have Kyron, so it's not the worst relation play in the world. I won Dalton Kincaid with Josh Allen, just like the correlation there. And ever since Dawson Knox has been out, consistent volume every single week and double-digit points each week as well. So we have $4,000 left, and we're kind of getting slim pickings here as far as our money is concerned. We could potentially look at a guy like Demario Douglas. I realize his head's getting cut off, but I don't feel like readjusting the picture here. But 9, 7, 7, 6 targets. No Kendrick Bourne. He's definitely been very solid here, so I don't mind him. I mean, I hate playing Patriots players, but he's cheap enough. So now we have $3,600 left for the last spot, and while I realize we're not really in the best range, we still have like Rondale Moore here if we wanted to go double Arizona wide receiver, especially if Marquise Brown is out. I don't think that would be the worst route to go. We have Shakir here if you want to go triple stack with Josh Allen. You could always take out Dalton Kincaid, save a little bit of money if you wanted to go that route. That's certainly possible as well. And if you want to save a little bit of money, you take out the Chiefs defense. That would put you right around $4,000, and you do have some better options here like Elijah Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, Robert Woods, Tutu Atwell. If Cooper Kupp happens to be out, I would be fine with him as a value play. We saw earlier in the season, both him and Puka Nacua have a definitive role in that offense. I'll leave your imagination up to here, but I think roster construction-wise, this doesn't look too bad. So if Josh Allen double stack with Stephon Diggs and Dalton Kincaid, ran back with DeAndre Swift. I love Kyron Williams this week versus Arizona. We have Greg Dortch just because there's value that's opened up at that position. And if Marquise Brown happens to miss as well, you could throw in 2 of them, and I think that'd be fine because they're just dirt cheap at their price points. Demario Douglas, he's been seeing targets ever since Kendrick Bourne has been out. And then the defense, I don't care who it is. But overall, I think that's fine roster construction. But like I said, do not copy and paste this. Apply your own favorite plays and your own favorite lineups, because I'm not going to be playing this. I'm just simply following the rules and showing you what looks like what could be a viable looking lineup. And like I said earlier, just want to run the optimizer here to see who is populating the most. Now, it's only Friday morning, so obviously things are going to change. Ownership projections will, and projections in general. But all I did was throw in some very minor stacking settings here, put on a little bit of randomness so they're not the exact projections, and we will see what populated here. So if I had to guess, probably a lot of the guys that we did talk about because I'm usually in agreement. But as you can see, Jonathan Taylor populating a ton here, so I do think the ownership will be very high this week, despite the poor matchup. But I mean, matchup isn't everything, but that's my only slight concern. But obviously my projections like him a lot. Evan Ingram, Patriots defense, Michael Pittman, Derrick Henry. Juju's coming up a lot, and I did mention him, but man, I do not like that. So it's probably trying to jam in some expensive stacks here, or at least some expensive one-off players that I'm not maybe the biggest fan of. So that's probably something that where even though the projections like it, I'll probably just limit that to very, very small amount if I am doing 150 or 20 max, because I do not feel comfortable having that kind of amount of Juju Smith-Schuster this week. Greg Dortch is coming up a lot. I did just take out Michael Wilson in the projections, and if Marquise Brown is out, I mean, that's probably going to go up even more. And the same can be said for Rondell Moore as well. But pretty much everyone here we did talk about, so that should give you guys a decent idea who's going to be popular this week. Now, I'm not going to have the same exact projections as everybody else, but I can't imagine I'm going to be too far off. Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, New England, Arizona, KC, Philly, some of the top teams populating for me. Buffalo, not too much, so I guess I went kind of against the grain of my projections there when we were doing our roster construction build over on DraftKings, but that's all right. Indianapolis, Tampa Bay, Houston, Jacksonville, New York, New England, although that's probably just a few value plays over there. It's not like this is a game that's really worth stacking too much. So we're really not too surprised here. Maybe a couple things that shocked me a bit, but it seems like we're kind of in agreement with the projections this week. But with that being said, that's all I got for today's video. So I hope you enjoyed and I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving full of family, fun, friends, football, whatever it be. One of the Fs. One of the Fs. But I wish you all the best of luck this week, and I'll see you all next time. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you did enjoy, because I think I forgot to say that.